But if there's a mismatch on the levels, if you have too much estrogen, not enough progesterone, right? Or if they're both of them are low. So whatever the fluctuations are, that can also govern how you're gonna feel mood-wise. Progesterone we know as a calming hormone, right? It is a calming, relaxing. So if you lack progesterone, especially in the second half, then you're not gonna sleep well. You know, progesterone really helps you go to sleep. So women are taking bioidenticals. That's the reason why the doctors ask them to do the progesterone at nighttime, so they can help you sleep. Now, if you don't sleep, now I became a sleep expert when I had that head injury, but if you don't sleep, you become an angry person, irritable person, very anxious person, and nervous. Nothing feels right when you don't sleep.
Welcome to the Woman's Doctor podcast, helping empower women to embrace their body and soul's full potential. I'm your host, Dr. Trevor Cates, and after 22 years of working with patients, I found the answers to our health struggles are much deeper than most people realize. To help explore this, I'm interviewing colleagues and other wellness experts to get to the root cause so women can realize their true beauty and be informed decision makers for themselves and their loved ones. Welcome to the Woman's Doctor podcast. I'm Dr. Trevor Cates, your host, and I love interviewing women who defy aging because it helps inspire us. I'm turning 50 this month, and I'm excited about this next decade and the next 50 years of my life. I surround myself with women who are aging gracefully. They're achieving this by the lifestyle choices they make and their mindset. So today's interview is intended to inspire you. I won't tell you her age because I want you to guess. She looks much younger than her age, but it hasn't always been that way for her. And she shares some of her story in today's podcast and how she's helped herself and others reframe the way we view aging and menopause. My guest is Dr. Susanne Bennett, who has been practicing as a natural medicine doctor for 32 years with a specialty in clinical nutrition, environmental medicine, allergies, anti-aging, and gut health. I interviewed Dr. Bennett for the Hormones, Health, and Harmony docuseries, but much of her interview did not make it into the series, so we're sharing it today in the Woman's Doctor podcast. Today, we bust myths around women's health, aging, and menopause. So please enjoy this interview. And if you'd like to watch the entire interview, you can learn more at hormoneseries.com. What is the biggest myth around women's health?
I would say probably the biggest myth that's out there, at least from my standpoint, is that women believe that once they hit menopause, they're done. You know, they are now, everything is downhill, like their face starts to drag down, their skin, their body, their muscles, and just everything. And I want them to know that it's not true. At least I don't believe so. And if you look at all the different aspects of your life, your lifestyle, and make sure that you take good care of your health from the inside out, then I think that you will age beautifully, and you may actually like yourself even more as you get older. And that's how I feel about myself.
Can you explain what menopause is?
Menopause is basically a phase of a woman's life that once their body, I'm talking more ovaries, are not able to produce, I should say, ovulate and have an egg release, then there's no more eggs, which means there's an area of the ovary called the corpus luteum that creates the hormones. So there's no egg, then there's no corpus luteum in the second phase of the menstrual cycle, and then you don't have a cycle. You don't have an actual blood flow. So a lot of the hormones are shifted during that phase in life. And most of the time it's anywhere from 45 to about 55, 60 years old. That's when women go through the change and they start to go through the different shifts when you are going to be lower in those female hormones, those essential hormones that put you in a position of having a menstrual cycle.
Why is it that we should not dread menopause?
I find that the medical profession and people in general look at menopause like a disease, actually, like a condition that women get, at a certain age, and they've got to fix it. in some way. In many different ways. In the medical route, the allopathic route, they use hormone therapy. There's many different things to look at when it comes to that. But for me, menopause is just another phase in a woman's life. So if a woman if you want to live up to 90, 100, you can, but 40 maybe plus years, you're not going to have a cycle. But you can live a very fulfilling, happy, joyful, physical life without feeling like, you know what, I'm getting older, I'm aging, I'm an old woman, nothing works, I can't have sex. And, there's a lot of things that women believe in. Some of it has to do with the media, I think. What they write about, and also what women believe, that once you're at that phase, women cut their hair shorter, you know what I mean? It's really interesting how different cultures look at menopause differently.
What did you personally experience that put you in menopause early?
Yes. I actually haven't had a period for 10 years, since 48 years old. And what happened was I had a severe brain and head injury, just a compression. I stood up into an open refrigerator door, upper refrigerator door, the freezer door, and basically I did a compression of a head and neck. I had 4 central protrusion, and what that means is that the disc herniations were right butt up against my spinal cord. On top of that, I had a really severe concussion in the brain, which choked my pituitary gland. Now, if you know what pituitary gland is that the pituitary gland is to help you with, it's a master gland. It tells your thyroid what to do, your adrenals what to do, and your female organs what to do. And everything shut down. So I had what's called a pan-hypopituitarism, where my entire pituitary gland was choked because there's no blood flow from the swelling of the brain. And immediately, within 10 days, 2 weeks, I started experiencing symptomatology, hypothyroid, hypoadrenia, and then I lost my period exactly at that moment. I had no cycle after that, and that was at 48 years old. So I went into abrupt menopause. It's not something that I chose. I was hoping that I'd last another 6 years, but it was gone. And I started rapidly deteriorating. Thyroid, hypothyroid, I was losing my hair. I was gaining weight. I was cold all the time. I was getting depression pretty quickly. My adrenals, I was peeing all day. I was urinating all day. I was urinating all day long excessively because the adrenals make a hormone called aldosterone, and it is what controls your water metabolism in your body. So I couldn't control it, and I'm getting dehydrated. On top of that, my cortisol level was down to nothing because my adrenals were insufficient. And then, of course, my hormones, because inside the adrenal glands, you also produce amazing steroid hormones, which is supposed to help you during your menopausal phase. When you're starting to phase out your cycle, that's supposed to kick in. Well, I didn't even have that. And then, of course, my period stopped. So the biggest factor I'd say that really scared me was because not only was I going through physical symptomatology, I was also emotionally distraught. Anxiety was up the roof. It was really difficult. I had a lot of sleep issues. And then I started gaining weight in all the wrong places. My belly was getting bigger. And part of it was because my microbiome was thrown off. Whenever you're under any kind of trauma, emotional, mental, psychological, physical trauma, which was mine, your gut always has a play in it. It will affect it. It will affect. So the same thing, if you had a gut problem, then your trauma or your experiences with your environment or what's happening will be worse. But for me, it was a physical issue that caused a gut issue. And it took a while for the gut to heal. And then finally, over the next, I'd say 2 to 3 months, I started experiencing sarcopenia. Now, sarcopenia is age-related muscle loss, but mine was trauma-related. So I started losing because I didn't have all my hormones, right? And when I was really in a lot of pain and I had bilateral numbness, both arms were numb. And for the first impact, actually, all 4 limbs were numb. And that really scared me. So my thought of moving my neck and moving my head and exercising, I just stopped exercising. And I think that was a mistake, mistake because that's when I started losing my muscle mass and my skeletal muscle, I am sure. So losing my muscles, losing the muscles in my face even, and I could see the changes with the laxity in my skin because everything's shrinking. Remember, the muscles in your face really helps you create tightening and lifting and glow and blood flow and all that. I was just losing it. So I decided that it was really, no matter what the medical way, I just couldn't, there weren't anything that's going to help me. I wasn't going to get surgery in the neck, right? And when it comes to a concussion, it's not like you do anything. You just got to write it out. So what I did was I dug really deep into all the science about head injuries and reviving my brain and reviving the communication, reviving my pituitary gland and the communication of the endocrine system. And what came out was the mitochondria. And I became a mitochondria expert and wrote the book, The Mighty Mito. So that book, Mighty Mito, is all about my experience and then what it took for me to gain it all back. My period never showed up. I just never got it back, But majority of my health, I am so much better now because of mitochondria. Rejuvenating, reviving the mitochondria in the pituitary and making it even better, making it even in a much more healthier and optimal state because now everyone knows that your mitochondria has everything to do with the aging process, everything to do with every disease, chronic illnesses that we deal with, from diabetes to heart disease to high blood pressure, to cancers, to autoimmune conditions. For me, it was from a trauma related, but I'm so happy to I'm so happy to see that learning about the mitochondria really helped the rest of my patient load.
How are hormones and mood related?
What I do know from my experience, but also from helping my patients with mood issues during their cycle, premenstrual, there's many different times, right? It could be ovulation, actually, mid-cycle, right at the beginning of the luteal phase, people really start to go downhill for I've heard many times, my patients would say, oh my God, I'm good the first 2 weeks of the month, but the second 2 weeks, I don't know who I am. I don't know who I am, and I'm depressed, I'm more anxious, I cannot sleep, I'm biting off everyone's, head, and I'm just not myself. I'm not myself, and that has a lot to do with the luteal phase. And of course, the luteal phase is when you've already ovulated, and then that's when the corpus luteum starts to output, and then you get the double hump of the estrogen going back up and then the progesterone going back up. But if there's a mismatch on the levels, if you have too much estrogen, not enough progesterone, right? Or if both of them are low. So whatever the fluctuations are, that can also govern how you're going to feel mood-wise. Progesterone we know as a calming hormone, right? It is a calming, relaxing. So if you lack progesterone, especially in the second half, then you're not going to sleep well. Progesterone really helps you go to sleep. So women are taking bioidenticals. That's the reason why the doctors ask them to do the progesterone at nighttime, so they can help you sleep. Now, if you don't sleep, now I became a sleep expert when I had that head injury, but if you don't sleep, you become an angry person, irritable person, very anxious person, and nervous. Nothing feels right when you don't sleep. So that's one of my biggest areas that I help women when they're in the hormonal phase and they're going through menopause. That's the first thing I try to fix. I should say the gut is the first, and then the second is sleep. Well, we all have some mood. We can't, things happen in life. But it's not as intense. You don't feel as heightened. There's a little window of space where there's a threshold. You might not go beyond that threshold. That puts you at that edgy angst, feeling of like, I'm crawling out of my skin type of a feeling. But if you're more imbalanced, then you're less fluctuating. So like I said that in the second half of the cycle, when things are a little bit more up and down in the hormonal balance, then if it's more in balance, those two hormones, estrogen and progesterone, are more in balance, then you're going to be in that little sweet spot. Not too high, not too low, right? And if you got that, you got a really easy period. Most of the cycle, people will say, oh gosh, it was so easy. I bled, but I didn't have a lot of clotting, I didn't have a lot of pain, and I was able to exercise and do my usual thing rather than being in bed, with an ice pack on my belly, or a hot pack on my lower back, and then laying down and making sure that I'm not going to come out for another day, And a lot of women go through those fluctuations. But I also think the fluctuations are caused by other things besides hormones. A lot of the food that we eat will make you more moody. There are foods such that are called natural opiates in our brain, gluteomorphins, which come from gluten. Those are food related, right? It's from the wheat, rye, barley, oats, kamut, spelt. These are all the grass grains that have gluten grains in it, gluten peptides in it. And then caseomorphins, which come from casein, any kind of dairy, and that includes cow's milk, sheep's milk, goat's milk, buffalo milk even. All of those, they are excitotoxins, and they will cause anxiety too. I have treated many women. Get them off of the dairy, get them off of these natural opiates that are in food, and sure enough, their PMS symptoms are much lower. So I would rather just say that everyone's unique, every woman is unique, and you just got to get to the root causes of those patterns. And once you fulfill them and once you heal, get rid of the issues and find that they're running in a much more optimal state and well-being, then those symptoms just dissipate. I mean, you can get anxiety just from a food allergy. I'm not saying that caseomorphins and gluteomorphins are allergy related. It's just that if you've got gut disorders and dysbiosis and possibility of what's called permeability issues, and you've got leaky gut, then those proteins can go into the bloodstream and trigger the excitation, trigger the anxiety. But there are other things that can trigger anxiety too, like mycotoxins, mold toxins. You're exposed to mold in your environment. You breathe it in and boom, it goes right up through your nose into your brain. That will clearly cause anxiety. Perfume. Did you know perfume can cause anxiety? Oh my goodness. I mean, I do a lot. I work with a lot of environmental medicine patients, right? The multiple chemical sensitive cases where when they're exposed to the environmental, even in a freshly painted house, or you're in an office and they just redid and got new furniture, or you're just driving your hot new car. Well, all of them, those chemicals, can affect your brain and cause anxiety. So I would say for a woman, don't just look at your hormones. Look at your environment, look what you're eating, look how you are with your people and your surroundings. That makes a big difference.
Do you think women experience more fluctuations in their weight than men?
Absolutely. I would say that if we're looking at hormones, right, the men have testosterone, and I wish I had more. Because that testosterone gives the man a completely different way of running. Their body runs differently. With testosterone, you gain muscle. With testosterone, you have stamina. You've got virility. With testosterone, you feel like $1,000,000. Now, with women, we've got estrogen, and women have testosterone too. We have androgens, but it's not as high. We have a hormone called aromatase, enzyme that just puts all our testosterone into the estrogen pathway. And what do estrogen do? Estrogen makes us feel calmer, more relaxed, and it's definitely not the same. And what is estrogen? It's an anabolic steroid, but really, I just say anabolic, it's really an adipose tissue. It makes more fat. And our fat can make hormones, estrogen as well. But if you have more estrogen in your body, you're likely to have more fat on your body, more than you really need it. We all need fat. I want you to have healthy levels of cholesterol, healthy levels of fat, because fat is our number one source of energy, especially for mitochondrial health, and to have high levels of ATP, energy, your currency of power, you need fats. So I'm a big believer in eating fats, but you don't want to be storing it all the time, because then that puts you in a state of more inflammation. Fat, in excessive amounts can be actually an organ, inflammatory organ, and cause other conditions and other hormone issues. So I would say that having testosterone, having a balance, So for a woman, we want to also improve our testosterone level. And I recommend, patients to take DHEA to do that. Give us a little more strength, and DHEA will help you slim your belly fat and gain more muscle. If you have muscle, you're going to be so much healthier because it will muscle reduces the level of blood sugar. So the likelihood of you having diabetes in the future is much lower. So having muscle is key. And DHEA will help you do that. And of course, testosterone. But there's a big difference between men and women. Let's flip-flop. Let's put a man with higher levels of estrogen, right? When men have higher levels of estrogen, what happens? They are more wishy-washy. They're not as clear in their ability to think and be focused and create solutions. They might be weepier. They have gain weight, and they gain weight in the wrong places. They get gynecomastia, which is man boobs. We've seen that. And, they do get the hips and belly fat as well. But if you put, estrogen in a man and they take it, they will definitely feel differently. I will tell you this, a patient of mine who was going through a change of gender from a male to a female and was doing the hormones. And the thing that she told me as she's getting the hormones, the biggest thing that she realized that was so different from being a male hormone-based to a female was that when she was having male hormones, she never looked at herself in the mirror, which was very interesting to me. Very odd and feeling insecure about the way she looked. And then as soon as she started doing the hormone injections, she would check herself out in the mirror while she's on the street, looking at the window, seeing, and always concerned. And I didn't realize it was that big. I thought that was a very, very interesting little, thing, difference between male and female. Although I don't think it's an important factor, but still, hormones do that to you. They make you feel different. I think fats in general are really good fats, okay? That's in nature, not anything that's been made up. And what I mean by that is like the margarine, right? And all of these other oils that's been extracted. If you're getting fats from animal fat, if you're getting fats from seeds and nuts naturally, I think it's a good thing. I think that there's an imbalance between, though, the omega-6s, and those are like safflower, cottonseed oil, sunflower oils, corn oil, all of these oils that you find in the grocery stores that majority of the population use. I think we eat too much of that, and that's causing a lot of inflammatory reactions.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Woman's Doctor podcast, be sure to share it with the women in your life and rate and review the show. And to learn all about balancing your hormones, join us for the Hormones, Health, and Harmony 9-part documentary series at hormoneseries.com.